Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, where we dive into the world of helicopter maintenance, repair, and overhaul. In each episode, we talk with the technicians, engineers, and experts who keep helicopters flying. Because at the end of the day, no maintenance, no mission.
Just in the last couple of years, we talked about shipping S-92s all around the world. 2 S-92s were stuck underneath an overpass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Truck driver hit it. Those are 2 very damaged S-92s. Who's responsible for that?
You know, that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. That's just poor planning, poor training, and then how that affects so many people. And it's not just the machine. It's the 40 or 50 people whose career, the next 3 months' work's just gone because of that decision. And I guess that's the key thing. It's slowing it down, analysing it, ask the questions. Don't be shy, because most forwarders are like me. We like to talk. We're kind of proud of what we do. And if you get a customer who's really interested, we're more than happy to share our knowledge.
Welcome to part 2 of our conversation. If you missed part 1, you can find it in our previous episode. Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in partnership with Vertical Magazine. In this 2-part Vertical MRO series, Ronnie Reese and I sit down with Don Lockie of Aviation Resource Group, a seasoned expert in international shipping and logistics, to unpack the high-stakes world of moving aviation assets across the globe. Don shares his journey into the aviation industry and the lessons learned from decades of navigating complex logistics. From understanding unique customer needs to managing razor-thin margins, he explains why experience and specialized knowledge are critical when the cargo is an aircraft. The discussion covers the hidden risks of oversimplifying logistics, the importance of risk management, and why building trusted partnerships can make or break a mission. With real-world examples, including aircraft shipments and unexpected challenges, Don illustrates how innovative problem-solving, effective planning, and clear communication keep operations on track. Whether you're managing fleet maintenance, overseeing part supply, or coordinating large-scale aviation moves, this conversation delivers valuable insights into the logistics and expertise required to succeed in today's global aviation market. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation, Vertical Aviation International, and Airbus.
Well, I'd like to get, that's a great example. I'd like to kind of get into another example, Africa, right? When I was working at an OEM, we always said Africa is where aircraft don't go to die. They just gain their third life, right? And I know you probably have quite a bit of experience shipping things in and out of there. Can you talk about some examples there?
Okay, this is going to the other extreme. This is a scenario, and this wasn't a Mar and Power operation. This was a relatively large European-based lessor organization that has a fleet of over 60, at the time had a fleet of over 60 heavies, 332s, 225s, 139s, etc., that sort of size aircraft. And they're primarily working in the energy sector. One of the problems with Africa, in this case, was they had positioned aircraft working and research off the African coast, West African coast. And then it was a regime change and a complete change of interest. Now, the biggest, as we all know, these aircraft, you don't just park them up when they're not flying and come back a month later and kick them in the guts again. There's a maintenance schedule that's got to be happening. There's procedure, etc. Otherwise, they just become very expensive piece monuments to park in museums. So we had a scenario where the client got hold of us in a bit of a quandary because these aircraft were on lease for another 3 years. The tech crew were essentially not marched at gunpoint, but were effectively given 3 days to leave because of the regime change. And the aircraft were basically pushed out of the hangar that was provided for them to the back of the airfield. And this is a hot, dusty country. And basically, at the same time, they were told, well, you've got no personnel here, but it doesn't matter. You've got effectively 30 days to get these aircraft out of this country. Now, the rough book value of those aircraft at the time was about $60 million US. So you can see the lessor was particularly concerned. The argument of who was going to pay the lease fees was a separate issue. The particular government that was walked away and supporting, that was a separate issue. The simple fact was they had these assets. If they didn't do something on 2 levels, one, maintaining a maintenance schedule, and B, getting them out of the country, they were write-offs. And So it boiled down to a scenario where we had to come up with a solution. We were in a part of the world that we couldn't just truck them across the border because one of the squabbles was challenging on that border. We had shipping equipment in South Africa at the time. We had to get over the South African border to get it up to where these aircraft were, and that involved two countries. We had a non-comfortable political situation, and we also had security issues getting on and off on the airport. So it was a bit of a case of international rescue scenario. How the hell are we going to do it? So we got called in on that, and the organisation basically gave us, and this was the respect we had. We had a keep it real, but don't quote, just do it. And we were talking multi-million dollars worth of charges here, because the moment you want to chart an Antonov, which in that case, and for those of you who are familiar, this is an Antonov. You're probably familiar with that aircraft. At the time, there was approximately 10 or 11 operating between Russia and Ukraine. So at the time, though, that we had an arrangement. So we went through a middleman, we negotiated, and then that involved a literally multi-million-dollar hire fee that had to be paid prior to the aircraft departing its location to get to this destination. So then you've got a financial transactional scenario. You're moving money through. You've got to find places to put it because you've got someone else's $2 or $3 million US. You don't really want it in your own bank account. You've got to get very clever how you do that. Add into that anti-laundering, you can see where we're going. And again, I don't want to bore the story. But so the scenario then again boiled down to then trying to establish a trust scenario. And this trust word comes through time and time and time again. We had to deal with so I was essentially put myself into a role in my team until we started working opposite time zones so we could be awake during the time when these guys were moving through. We got permissions through the right authorities and utilizing a freight partner in that country to negotiate to get a team over the border to get to the aircraft. We got approved engineers to the aircraft to demob them and make them suitable for flight condition. We had a team sent to South Africa to get equipment up, shipping gear, and bring that across. We had challenges getting the components, the shipping equipment, through these two countries because, of course, why are you transporting the stuff through to this country? There was a lot of, again, negotiation. The key thing was, and I've been trying to keep it pretty short here, the result was successful. We got the aircraft, we got the 3 aircraft prepared and ready to go. But then we had things out of left field, and this is the shit that you have to deal with. We had the Antonov booked to arrive at 0600 hours at the airfield, and a position was there near where the aircraft were going to be. The crew were going to land, the tech crew were going off to a hotel to sleep for 12 hours. That gave us a 12-hour window to get these aircraft loaded. The moment it went 12 hours and 1 minute, $25,000 an hour demurrage time, waiting time.
Ooh, wow.
Okay. Aircraft comes in, and about an hour out of coming into land, we get a message saying, we can't put the aircraft where we're going to because the president has put his plane there. He doesn't want to move it. So we had 3 225s sitting at one end of the airfield, and we had the Antonov at the other end. So we had to then do some quite clever moving to move these aircraft across, utilizing relatively ropey tugs to get the aircraft across. We managed to achieve that. We get the aircraft loaded, first one loaded up, and then let's just say lack of thinking by some locals from that particular area snapped our tow bar. So suddenly we had two 225s with no tow bar. We had a second tow bar that was there that was going back for repair. So again, a bit of innovation and a bit of number 8, what we say in New Zealand, number 8 wire, fencing wire technique to wind it.
Duct tape,
yep. Yeah. And got it pulled up and dragged. And then we were able to pull these aircraft up, not probably to Airbus's ideal way of towing them up, but we had to come up with a solution. We then get the aircraft loaded at 11 hours and 30 minutes. The tech crew have come back. They're starting to pre-flight the airplane. The fuel's been put in. Everything's ready to go. And then an official comes along and says, there's a landing fee to pay. Excuse me? We paid all that in advance. No. This is a weight fee. I need to see your documentation. And it worked out that effectively he wanted 20 US cents equivalent per total gross weight of the aircraft and the cargo. in cash
Wow.
to justify to give us permission to take off. So then and I'm sitting in New Zealand, and the decision I made was stay in New Zealand because I had to be a conductor. And so we're negotiating. And then as it boiled down, yes, this is straight out. I have to be careful what I say here, but it was a creative charge. Is that a nice way of putting it?
Yeah.
We then negotiated down because the guy was going for 100%. We had to give him something. So we came to a deal where we declared the weight of the helicopters, and he accepted, and this was the airport manager, a fee for the weight of the helicopters. This was literally a case that then one of our Ukrainians went into the top and grabbed a briefcase and literally flicked open the briefcase, so I'm told by one of my guys, and pulls out wads of US dollars to the equivalent amount to allow us the permission to take off. We get airborne, go to a halfway point in Northern Africa for refueling, and en route we're advised by British. This aircraft destination was Stansted, North London, UK. We then get advised that British authorities have refused the aircraft to come in because they don't feel the security was done to the right level in the origin country. And they're instructing us that we have to offload the helicopters off the aircraft, and then re-inspect them, etc. Of course, go back to our story. The tow bar's gone, and the tow bar's not going to cope with a whole. We've got an issue. So again, we're back on the phone. We're negotiating with British authorities, trying to get an approved way around. The Ghana was the fuel point, and Ghana has British influence. So it was agreed eventually that the helicopters would be made open, the aircraft be open, and the Ghana authorities would run their security animals through the aircraft, check it was all okay. Again, we got through, we got the doors closed, we got airborne, and 5-6 hours later or thereabouts, we were in Stansted and we were unloading, and the rest is history. Those aircraft were delivered. So the result was that the particular customer got an invoice from me that was very, very large. We got a return out of that was I think, quite fair for the time and effort we put in. But it was a really interesting, but, I believe a lot of the bald patch you're seeing on my head was created due to that to that situation. But this is what we do. And this is where the rotary industry needs to be honest with their freight partner, with whoever it may be, and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Is for us, a result is default. Delivery in for one time.
Wow.
So it sounds like standard equipment for your job is a big bottle of pain medicine, headache medicine, and antacid. I mean, if you don't have that, I'm not sure you'll survive more than a week in your job, it sounds like. Single
malt whiskey helps a lot too.
Good choice.
You've got all these great examples of the work that you've done. Again, earlier I mentioned you're going to be at the MRO conference. Can you talk about, for the folks who are listening, who are going to have the opportunity to see you present at the conference, kind of what you're planning on talking about without obviously, disclosing the entirety of your presentation?
Well, look, I guess, John, what I'm hoping is that, what we're doing today gives people a little bit of an understanding that, about, or a different perspective of what logistics is about, and understands how smart logistics is a partnership. I guess what I'm hoping to do while in Kelowna is almost allow people, if they've got burning questions, throw them at us. The other people in the group. I guess the key thing is don't get too hung up on detail. Don't get too hung up on what the latest situation is with the tariffs out of the US, because to be honest, they're changing. We don't know. But let's look at what is the controllable dynamics. Look at it. Theoretically, everyone there will be in some form of aviation. What can we control? Can we control the weather? No. Okay. But we plan for that scenario of the weather. So what can we control in shipping? Can we control a situation where a ship gets attacked as it's crossing through the near the Straits of Hormuz? No, you can't control that. That's a lottery whether your ship gets caught up with that or not. But what you can do is ensure that your insurance is correct, that you've got the right people that have secured the aircraft. I know in Kelowna there's an amazing company that's working really well in managing the disassemble and the maintenance and trying to put it into more of a combo package. and I'm happy to say their name, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. But I think that's the sort of stuff where it's trying to get the operators to think a little bit more beyond just cheap is good. I want to use the cheapest freight rate because it's a pain in the ass and it's a cost. I've used the example, and I'll use it now very simply. We've all, as we get older, we probably all incur the reality of a root canal with our dentist. We'll all deny it. We don't want to deal with it. It's a pain in the ass. It hurts, but eventually gets to the point you've got to deal with it. It's expensive, but the pain once it's sorted is I know from personal experience, it's bloody nice to get rid of the pain. But would I have gone to a dentist who only got qualified last week to do something that's complicated, and I'm going to them because they're the cheapest in town? No. I would be going to someone I felt either through recommendation or had experience. And I think that's a key part of what the provision and logistics is about in providers. It's an industry that's effectively still relatively unlicensed. So you can set yourself up as a freight forwarder relatively easily and say you've got the experience and tell a few white lies and kind of get away with it. So it's very important that these questionings we get in Kelowna are, deep thoughts. What's going on? What do we really need to try and achieve? What's your biggest fear? Is shipping a helicopter to the Ascension Islands for a rat eradication program actually a viable thing for us to have a go at? What are the risk factors? That's really, hopefully I can give that info back out.
So most of those operators that we will see in Kelowna, most of them are probably out fighting fires right now, right?
Yeah.
So shout out to you guys. Hopefully listen to this on a little bit of your downtime. But with that, and those folks that are going to be coming to listen to you and everybody else, I wouldn't be afraid to share who you think are doing this right. I mean, this is what this podcast is for, helping others understand what are the right things, the tips and tricks. What are some of the things that you see within Canada specifically that you think they should take a second look at, some folks doing it right, some tips, anything like that you have some guidance on?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Sure. Well, if I may, I'll do a little quick promo about what I'm trying to do now in my field, if it's suitable with aviation resource. Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to do, for those listening, is I'm no longer a freight forwarder. I sold Redfort Group in 2019 to an investment group. I feel the role for me now is to be an advisory capacity. And then if you look at my website, you'll see that I'm talking about I'm a concierge service. And I guess the key thing here is, and it's a traditional line I can see, and I've had this even quoted to me yesterday by a New Zealand colleague, bloody hell, I'm going to use a freight forwarder and I'm still going to have to pay you. Well, yeah. But the simple fact is what we're trying to do here is exactly where you're coming to, Ronnie, and the fact is that freight forwarders will tell you what you want to hear. You'll ask for a quote to move, you've got your firefighting machine down in, you want to get it down to Chile for a contract. You'll go to 3 freight companies. They're all good companies. They've all got good people, and they all are basically doing the same thing. And the 3 quotes will come down, and probably 2 will be similar. One will be kind of way out of left field, super cheap or super dear. But they'll all have different wording in them, and there'll be lots of anachronisms and worse than, freight is worse than aviation for short codes. And you'll sit there and you look at it and you go, what the hell is all these, these charges, THCs, BAFs, surcharge, I don't know, So
WTF.
Basically it is WTF. And so the key thing is what we're trying to do is be an interpreter and expand on that, and then be in a position where we work with you as the operator and go, well, okay, let's have a look at those quotations. Let's see what they're offering. What are they good at? And then ask those questions to that operator. Like, if it's all very well saying they're quoting, and these guys are sitting in Toronto and they're telling you that they can ship out of Vancouver. Well, okay, how you what personnel have you got over there to oversee it? So that's the key stuff to build. So my goal is to reduce the jargon, provide a level of confidence and essentially be a bolt-on shipping department for operators who don't need a shipping department all the time. So coming back specifically to your question about Canada, look, I guess the key thing is that Canada is very, very protection focused on the timber. And so the ag issues are there. There's obviously big concerns now crossing the border. If your power plant's moving down to PwC for PW for maintenance, and then it's coming back in. Who's paying? So again, it's slowing it down, looking about what you're trying to do. But look, there's some amazing operators. Kelowna in itself is you've got the hub of so much operations around BC and across at Calgary. There's a lot of innovation. There's some personalities in my game who have now retired out, but I understand that there's some amazing, great young people coming through in a couple of the corporates who are really starting to rock and roll. And I guess that's the key thing. If we can get operators to ask questions about how, and the easy way of putting it is you go to McDonald's and get a quarter pounder. Well, ask the question how that quarter pounder is made. It's not that big a deal. Where's the cheese come from? Where's this come from? Where's the meat come from? Ask those questions so that you're more confident about what you're buying when you go to your freight guy. So you're less likely to come badly unstuck when you realize that, it's going to Korea and the Koreans have introduced a new surcharge for inspection. And the fact that the helicopter was locked, they couldn't have had to force their way in. So they've now smashed the door handle and you've now got an aircraft that can't fly. Not saying that would happen, but if you've got a government authority that wants to get in, they're not going to worry about aviation-related issues. So, yep. Yeah.
So you mentioned Canada being protectionist protective of timber and so forth. Does it make sense for operators to invest in their own shipping containers, metal containers, Pelican cases, the blue boxes by TurboLift, et cetera? Does it make sense to help reduce that risk or protect them from additional risk, I guess?
Okay. Shipper-owned containers, be very cautious with, because shipper-owned containers have to be certified. They have a period of life, and once they go beyond that, they're just tin boxes. So you need to think seriously about how you will do those. The other thing too, ironically, is that shipping lines don't necessarily like a shipper-owned box because they have allocations. They're like airlines. They're sharing slots of each other. And if you show up wanting to book your box and it's a shipper-owned box, they probably will charge you a greater freight rate than you will be if you're using their own gear. And there may be an ability where they're going to go, no, they can't take it for this sailing or whatever. So it's a buyer beware scenario. In saying that, I'm managing at the moment 40 odd containers, shipper-owned containers out of Northern Australia to Europe for a customer who's purchased a significant amount of old parts. And basically, they brought the containers, and once they get to Europe, they'll be parked up. Then they just need the containers there. Going to the other equipment, yeah. Now this is interesting. If you take your simple, simple's unfair. Your H125 that showed up out of France, it's going to come with yellow blade box or black gear. The box is there. They're treated. Agricultural requirements that the timber has been treated with a chemical to not allow for bug, termites, etc., to nest and grow in that timber. And if you go out to your warehouse, if you don't know what it is, and go and find a pallet, a clean-looking pallet, it's probably got a triangle with a number, and that'll be where the pallet was treated, and it will have the origin of where it was done. Might be NZ, AU, CA, etc., etc. So that's an important part. So as long as your timber is done to that level, then that provides. But yes, if you declare something with timber in your packaging, you will bring up on a level that involves an agricultural authority to look at. So ultimately, if you're moving gear and you're intending to move that asset twice a year, 3 times, to fire seasons, then the investment in specific shipping gear that's made of carbon fiber, aluminium, is definitely viable. And most of the regular players are doing that these days because it just makes life simple. The other thing, of course, then is if you do have to move something that's an engine or a blade or something separately to get it back for maintenance, you've now got a box that's strong and not going to cause issues. But I think most importantly, and I think this is critical, is invest in a portable vacuum cleaner. Battery, just get a DeWalt version of a vacuum cleaner, and then before you ship, you just vac the shit out of everything. And if you don't do that, then because at least then you can honestly declare that it is dust free, blah blah blah, and critical.
Take pictures before and after.
Oh yeah, pictures before and after, and because that has a dual benefit, of course, of insurance. If you've taken your stab off and you've secured the stab in the back seat of the 125, for example, or 130, whichever type of aircraft you're dealing with, or Koala. Again, you can show where the stab is, how you packaged it. If it doesn't, if it's too large, it's a Hawk stab, for example, you ain't going to be putting that so easily in the back if you've got other gear in there. So how you fitted there. So photos, really important.
For those that don't buy or sell their helicopters that often or shipping them from somewhere else in the world, can you talk about the trends between shipping via ship or air, what those rates have been looking like, or any complications that come up over the past year? Obviously, changing governments have had a thing from tariffs and unknown expectations. Can you talk about kind of the challenges and what folks should be looking out for right now?
Thank you to our sponsor, Vertical Aviation International. This March, you need to be at Verticon, the largest vertical aviation trade show and conference in the world. With over 15,000 attendees and all the major OEMs and suppliers, it's the place to be. Register today and save. Early bird prices end January 16th. Go to verticon.org.
Okay, this is going to be controversial, but I think it's really important. Is for
John lives for controversy.
Yeah, for fuck's sake, don't trust AI when getting rates. That is it. That is a so serious thing to consider. AI will tell you what you want to hear, and I've done it myself, just for cross-referencing and checking. You will get all sorts of information telling you that the rates are dropping Trans-Pacific because nobody's shipping out of China at the moment because of the tariffs. Okay, that's fine. But what do bus companies do? What do airlines do? What do shipping lines do when they don't have cargo or people? They cut back. So suddenly you've now gone from a ship port to port here of, say, a ship a week or 2 ships a week down to 1 ship every 10 days. So you're getting, or they'll reroute the ship. So the rates are not actually significantly coming down. The other thing, of course, is sure, your freight rate might drop, but suddenly your war risk surcharge will increase, or your peak season surcharge will increase. So you get, so it's never going to be much different. So that's a really key part of it, is don't necessarily make your decision based on a rate you found on an online site. Verify it through a provider or service. That's really key. Air freight is challenging due to a change in platforms. And I mentioned earlier before about the blades that you sent up to LA and now you're trying to get up to Moscow, Idaho. If we were doing the same conversation 30 years ago, there would have been an L1011 or something big to put that blade in, because underneath the belly would have been long enough. But of course, as we all now know, you travel in the States, it's either a 737 or an A320, effectively A3 or A3 model. So they're smaller aircraft. There's no room to put a blade box in. Now, what the airlines are very good at doing these days is they'll say it's UA 7124. Oh, yep, and it's LA to Sacramento. Great. I think it's a flight. Wonderful. But it's actually a truck. And it's fully licensed. It's all covered. But it's a truck for carrying freight. It's not an air ride truck. So now so it's no longer a blade. It's a PT6. Now suddenly you've got your PT6 that's sitting in the back of a bouncy old truck. It's not going to be, and anyone listening to this who's in the aerospace knows, you're going to have blades that are bent, well, not bent and twisted, but you're going to have problems with bearings and with that situation. So you need to be, again, ensuring the routing is best possible. And this comes back to utilizing the sample there before, Ronnie, with John, where you've now dispatched it to John, but John knows that to get it up to Moscow is going to be a real bitch. So he may utilize a trucking company he trusts that runs an air ride truck, or he'll come up with another solution where he might, through his freight forwarder he's using in his part of the world, can run it up on FedEx in a 7.6, and it's going to run through to Boise. But it's going to be now a domestic move. So that, again, is being intelligent in your decision making. So it's pretty key. And I think, so rates are never going to come down. They're always going to go up. Options are going to get tighter. And one thing for certain, regulations are going to get more and more stricter. So paperwork is going to become more and more essential to have 100% correct. Last comment on this is, back in the early, 20, 30 years ago, I can produce a commercial invoice to get it out of the country. John can have a different commercial invoice to bring it into the country, and there's never a comparison of the two. So unless there's something really bullshitting there, it'll slide through. Now, that commercial document that's used to get it out of the country will be inspected by US CBP, and US Customs will look at it and go, hang on, the system will generate, so those providing two different values. Something's funny here, it'll get redlined. It'll then be manually checked, and of course, and then potentially, if it's a big enough screw up, you've just left your aircraft sitting on Long Beach Wharf, and it's stuck there at 14 days at $200-300 a day storage, all because of John trying to save himself $150 worth of duty.
Yeah. What's interesting is you don't know what you don't know. And I think, again, a lot of people, like you kind of talked about, they kind of consider these things at the last moment. It's not really a planned out event. What I like about you and the concierge service that you offer is you've spent a career essentially learning the pitfalls of these things you're describing through experience and things you've seen and heard. So one more instance that I want to have you talk about that kind of highlights, I guess, the value of what you're describing is the Italian OEM demo that you helped with down in New Zealand. There was a tight schedule that was to be had, and kind of how you stepped in and helped solve some of the issues that came up there.
Again, I'll try and keep it fairly abridged, and obviously anyone who's seriously wants to know about it, talk to them in Kelowna about it. But the nutshell was, it was an Augusta 119 early version koala, and privately owned. It was Italy. Augusta, as it was known at the time, wanted to get the aircraft into New Zealand to demonstrate it. They saw it as an ideal for the tourist market in New Zealand, skid-based, single engine, good BT6, et cetera, right numbers, and they wanted to get it across it. And there was the closest one for New Zealand was this one that was privately owned. He was open to have his aircraft sent to New Zealand. The difficulty was they had a 4-week window from when he no longer required the aircraft to having it back in the air for some personal thing that he had to be at. So there was concern. The biggest problem for doing the traditional way of routing it was dismantling would have taken a week, reassembling would have taken a week. And if we'd flown it in pieces across with the limited options across the Tasman, you effectively were going to lose another week in flight time. So if you were fortunate with no delays, you'd have got 4 days demonstration of the aircraft, and significantly high costs for Augusta at the time. There was even informal negotiations with Defence Department on whether it could be squeezed into a C-130 and popped over. But again, the practicalities of that was quite complicated. So we were approached by that particular company, by that owner's, his management people, to come up with a solution. And what we did was we at the time, Trans-Tasman, there was a shipping service that routed effectively Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, Christchurch in the South Island, or a port called Littleton, and then back across the Tasman. And they ran vessels which effectively were what is known in the trade as ro-ro vessels. They weren't true ro-ro, but they had a ramp that came down at the back, and they primarily were moving building products, was a large part of the business between Australia and New Zealand, and they utilised that system of hauling the products in and out through the back door as opposed to containers on the top. So a bit of fast talking and a little bit of Kiwi ingenuity, and I guess a classic freight forwarder, me going on the phone, going, "Yep, not a problem, I can do that." Hanging up and going, "Oh shit, what do I do now?" We had to come up with some solution. So basically, what the long story short there was, we managed to we negotiated to get the aircraft onto that ship, and the ship, once it left Australia, was 4 to 5 days transit, 4 days transit from Sydney to Auckland. And the cycle was a 2-week. So we had just over 2 weeks, 18 days, and then it would be back in Auckland again. So we worked out that if we could get the aircraft over, we would have 18 days for them to do their demonstration purpose, which was fractionally shorter than the targeted 20 days, but it was still sufficient. So then that was easy. We got confirmation that we could put the aircraft on the ship both directions, but then, of course, we had to find a way to get it onto the ship. Now, anyone on this call will know that the ground handling wheels are ground handling wheels for flat concrete surfaces, not for going over ports and being dragged up ramps and ships, etc. So what we had to do is we had to design a relatively simple trailer without, again, costing significant amounts of money. So what we worked with the shipping line was we borrowed off them a cradle system that they used for moving non-mobile vehicles. So they had a trailer system it was like a skate system, and we take it through that. So we modified a skate system, and we were able to bring the aircraft in. We landed it we had to then, the next thing was that ship sailed out of a port called Darling Harbour, which is now a main tourist part of Sydney. And it was just transitioning from that mode. So we had to get permissions from Sydney City to allow us to actually land the helicopter on the port. So that required another again of fast talking. We got it on, we managed to secure it, we moved the blades, secured it adequately for the journey. We pulled it across onto the ship, tied it down. And the result was 4 days later, it arrived Auckland. Reverse process, the aircraft traveled around New Zealand, demonstrated, was very successful. And now there's currently not a big number of koalas, but about 4 koalas, I think, in the country, possibly a small number anyway. But it was a good result, and then returned it back through. The key takeaway on this, to me, is the fact that the ended up pricing for Augusta was very cost effective. It was essentially 2 shipping costs, a little bit of engineering for a cradle. It was fine. The blade boxes were secure. Everything was secure. The marketing was done correctly. The air crew, the engineering crew were able to work. We were able to get them on the wharf to do the work. The flight takeoff was arranged. In fact, there's a little funny side story here, which is kind of interesting. And I guess we can say now that so far ago that no one will get in trouble. But on the day of loading, my daughter at the time was 3 years old, and we had a bit of a clash. My wife was on duty nursing, and I had to take my daughter onto the wharf with me because we were doing the final checks before we put the aircraft airborne. To make sure she was safe, we put her inside the aircraft because I couldn't be with the car for the whole time. So we sat in the aircraft, and she had a little book and she was doing everything. Anyway, the crew turn around and say to her, "Do you want to come for the flight, Hannah?" And next thing I know, she's strapped in, ready to go. And I'm going, "Sure, yeah, I want to go, Daddy, I want to go." And it was just a takeoff from the port to landing to the other side of the port where the helipad was at Auckland City for fuel. And I tell you what, that was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life. Like knowing full well the aircraft was safe, it was all secure, and you had all the crew on board, not a problem. But here's my daughter sitting inside the aircraft, getting her first little ride in a helicopter across to there. And the worry I had of something gone wrong, how I'd have told her mother, not quite sure. But so it's kind of a bit of it's family mythology these days. But
thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
But it speaks to the confidence you have in your ability to safely package and ship that stuff, like you had mentioned. If you're not willing to put yourself in there or family, then essentially, like I said, it's your own sense of pride in what you're doing and your own confidence
You got
in your product, which is great.
Yeah. And that was exactly right. And I think, there may be one or two listening going, oh, why would you risk putting your daughter in a helicopter? You have to remember, we do this all the time. We put blades on, we certify them, we have qualified engineers. That's part of helicopters, that's aviation. The environment was fine, and you do a risk assessment, which, and then you look at the benefit. And I thought, my daughter was growing up with her old man developing a logistics business around helicopters. To me, I felt it was the opportunity, and to have pulled her out would have created more of a fear, I felt, for her, and I wanted her to be comfortable. So, yeah, there was a risk, but you mitigate that risk with all the things around it. And this comes back to what we do.
Yeah.
How do we minimize, my daughter's now a nurse and 28 years old, yeah. And, doesn't have a fear of flying, so that's a good thing.
You still talk about that flight. That's great. It's interesting as you've talked through a few of these scenarios, some of the innovative ways that you've come up with the problem-solving solutions for broken tow bars, for moving aircraft onto ships. The things that you guys are doing, I think, if I put myself in your shoes, I'd be like, man, I've got no clue where to even start. But you guys have all this experience and background in doing this. Really interesting. Some of the takeaways that I had listed as I went through your different experiences you've had is you find a way, as you outline in these different circumstances, you find a way to deal with it. You're innovative and meticulous in thinking through these different solutions, applying a surgical precision, again, thinking through these different steps and what might be needed to get through each thing. And you talk about risks, taking calculated risk. In aviation, everything's about mitigating risks, right? Aviation's full of risks. That's inherently what we do. That's where we live. But we can figure out ways to mitigate that risk and as you say, be calculated in how we do that. So you've kind of displayed all those points throughout our conversation, which essentially sounds like some of the nuts and bolts required for international logistics, for shipping, the stuff that we're talking about. Excited to have you come up to Kelowna and present to a large group of people. I think that'll find a lot of value in this. But before we sign off, Ronnie, any kind of closing thoughts or questions?
Again, I think it may be easier to buy a house or do many of other things that we think of than it is to do some of what you do. But that's why we have real estate agents, obviously. And I think that's why other people should look towards you when shipping very complex things, very expensive things. They're time critical. Look to someone like you or others like you to help them, with their complex shipments. And if they have questions, come talk to you at the Kelowna or other conferences in the future.
Thank you.
Don, for you, again, you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the industry. Any kind of closing thoughts or scenarios you'd like to pose for the folks listening?
Yeah, look, I guess the simple thing is it's a serious game, and I've deliberately pulled back with Thunderbird 2 there. If that was created and it was a freight carrier that fixed all problems. They had they could get the thing in the pod and fly it quickly to the destination to do the emergency, and I guess that's simply what it boils down to. But that even if you at the risk of sounding a little serious here, but even if you drill down the Thunderbird story, the infrastructure that was in place there to make it work, that was what was the success of those adventures. And sure, it was a fantasy, blah blah blah, but the reality is what we do is in what our industry is about. You hit the nail on the head. We're a high risk industry, but we mitigate that risk by procedures, caution, training, follow up, and going back to cross-checking. To me, the successful logistics players who have made history in the rotary sector have all done that. And, you've got plenty that will pop up for a period of time and say, oh, we're aerospace specialists. But you find they're not there 18 months later. And it's often, if you drill it down, and I'm pretty confident I'm factual on this, is that they've had an incident, they've gone to their underwriters have paid out and said, you will never touch an aviation product again. They get, because it's an expensive game, they get it wrong. So it's really important. Look at the combined expertise of those out there. I've deliberately not patting the back on any out there, because this is not what this is about. But, I'm happy to talk with individuals, come up with suggestions, and I would imagine on many occasions we'd come back and I'd give your listeners the confidence to know that a lot of the decisions they're making are the right ones, and that's the key thing.
Yeah.
Knowing that their asset is not guaranteed that it's going to get not 100%, but nothing is. But they've done everything possible to make sure they've got themselves in the best place to show up on the 1st of July in the new country or in the new location, ready to fight fires, chase fish, do seismic, or do EMS, whatever the vector is, and get out again. And that's really what's key. And minimize the downtime.
For those that are listening who either have a question or they're in need of your services, how could they find you and how could they get in touch with you?
Well, our website's existence, I'm sure you can pop that up on there, but www.argroupnz, NovemberZulu.com. We're on LinkedIn. There's a LinkedIn page for us. My email's pretty much the same, pretty easy to get, don@argroupnz.com. And you'll find me. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I think basically just work from there and shoot a question. As I say, there would be a point where I'd probably want to put the meter on for when we get deep in questions. But initially, I'm just more than happy to throw ideas around, because you mentioned before, Ronnie, the 92s and the bridges in Canada there. That sort of up shouldn't happen. That should not happen. That's just poor planning, poor training, and then how that affects so many people. And it's not just the machine; it's the 40 or 50 people's whose career, their next 3 months' work's just gone because of that decision. And I guess that's the key thing. It's slowing it down, analyzing it. Okay, the carrier that you're using may be subcontracting. Make sure the carrier tells you they're subcontracting. Have they worked out a route? Has everybody agreed? Would the owner want to be there to go along for the ride? Ask the questions. Don't be shy, because most forwarders are like me. We like to talk. We're kind of proud of what we do. And if you get a customer who's really interested, we're more than happy to share our knowledge and things. We don't see it as competitive. We just see it as a really good thing.
Awesome. Well, Don, thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to come to the conference and share your expertise. For the folks that are attending, I know again, it's one of the most highly registered for courses already.
Right.
So excited to see you there. Excited for the class. For those that don't go to Kelowna, reach out to Don by the ways that he asked, or we'll go through us and we'll gladly connect you there. So thank you guys again. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the podcast. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Could I just make a quick thank you to everyone listening in? And I do appreciate it. Our product is not seen as sexy, and often it's that, worry about it later. I really appreciate those taking the time to listen in and gain a bit of understanding. And I appreciate you guys making throwing this up as an opportunity to talk. I don't think it's being done too much around the industry. I may be wrong, but my gut feeling is this is probably the first one of these type of scenarios. It's starting to open up the dark arts of logistics. So excited, and thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I'll just say, what's the old Army saying? Soldiers win the battle, but logistics wins the war, right?
Yep.
It's been interesting as you've kind of pulled the curtain back on some of the logistics and the things that go into the planning of moving aircraft and high value items. Some of the stuff that most people I don't think consider. You kind of think, I'm going to put it on this truck or this airplane or this boat, and it's going to get from point A to point B without even thinking through all the stuff you've outlined. So it's been really informative for me, and I know our audience will feel the same way.
Great.
So thank you again, and Don, for joining us. It's again Tuesday morning for you. It's Monday evening for us. Always fun and interesting to have these international conversations. So looking forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, we'll catch you later.
Thanks, guys.
Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Vertical Aviation International. This March, you need to be at Verticon, the largest vertical aviation trade show and conference in the world. With over 15,000 attendees and all the major OEMs and suppliers, it's the place to be. Register today and save. Early bird prices end January 16th. Go to verticon.org. Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Thank you for listening to this special two-part series on the Vertical MRO Podcast. A huge thank you to Don Lockie for sharing his extensive expertise in international aviation logistics, highlighting the importance of experience, risk management, and trusted partnerships in moving aircraft worldwide. Don't miss Don Lockie at the Vertical MRO Conference, and thank you to Navigate for making that possible. For more information on Navigate, go to navi-gate.be. We hope you found these insights helpful. Stay tuned for more in-depth conversations and industry insights. Until next time, see you later.